All right, so we're about to talk about arc length and sector area. So we kind of just want to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about. So arc length is a portion of the circumference. So remember, circumference is the distance around the edge of the circle. And so what we're talking about is just a piece of the distance around the circle. So if let's use a highlighter just so you can see what I'm talking about. And if that's the case, what I'm talking about would be this space here. Okay, so that is the arc length when we're talking about the distance for a portion around the circumference. And so for arc length, you have to use the formula x divided by 360 times the circumference, and that's what that C stands for. And so that should help. If we know that arc length is a portion of the circumference, then hopefully you should know C. And so remember that the formula for C is really 2 pi r. Okay, and so x would technically be the arc measure. So if we're using here, then we want this. X degrees is the arc measure. And the only other piece of information we're going to need is the radius. And remember that sometimes for the radius, they will give you the diameter. And you just know you have to cut that in half. Okay, so let's try some practice with these. So question 1, we want to find the length of EF, of arc EF. Okay, so hopefully you can see that from E to F is a minor arc, and we're trying to find the length. So remember, if the central angle is 120, then the degree of the arc is also 120 degrees. So we put into the formula, it is 120 divided by 360, because remember an entire circle is 360, so this is just a portion of that, times the circumference, which since they didn't give us the circumference, but we know information to find the circumference, we know the radius, so we have 2 times pi times the radius of 6. So I'm going to just go ahead and substitute that in. Okay, and then you can just go ahead and multiply all this. So I'm just going to go ahead and simplify. 120 over 360 is 1/3. And then I'm going to do the number. So 2 times 6 is 12 pi. And the reason I'm doing this way is because sometimes you see the answer in terms of pi. And so that means you would multiply everything except for pi. So 1/3 times 12 is 4. So if you wanted your answer in terms of pi, 4 pi would be your answer. And then if you needed to change it to a decimal, you would just put 4 times pi in the calculator, and you would get about 12.57. And we'll say that's meters. So that means EF is about 12.57 meters long. But that doesn't mean the degree of this arc is 120 degrees. So make sure you understand there's a difference there. All right, let's try number 2. So number 2 says the diameter is 24 centimeters. Find the length of CD. So we want the length of CD right here, which is this minor arc. The central angle is 60 degrees, which would make the degree of this arc that's intercepted 60 degrees as well. So let's go ahead and plug that. We got our arc, degree of the arc measure, divided by 360, times their circumference. And so they didn't give us the circumference, so we can put it into the formula. And remember that circumference is 2 pi r, or it's just pi times the diameter. And since we know the diameter, or we know the diameter is 24, we know the radius is 12. So either way, because remember circumference is 2 pi r, or pi times the diameter. So then we can do pi times the diameter of 24. Okay, and just so you can see this, so 60 divided by 360 is 1/6 times 24 pi. And so if you wanted to keep it in terms of pi, we would just multiply the numbers. So 1/6 times 24 is 4. So 4 pi would be the answer here. And if I wanted the decimal, I'll go ahead and multiply those two together, and you get 12.57 centimeters in this case. So that means CD would be 12.57 centimeters long. Okay. And now let's talk about sector area. Sector area is a portion of the area. And the formula is very similar to that of arc length, except for we do the arc measure, again, divided by 360, times now the area of the entire circle. And remember, to get the area of the entire circle, that is from your formula sheet, pi r squared. So just for reference, area and circumference are always on your formula sheet, but the formulas for sector area and arc length are not. But if you know that it's one is times area and the other one's times circumference, just remember the x over 360. And so just for reference, remember x is your arc measure, and then you have your radius, okay? And so the shaded region is what we are looking for. That's your sector area. And so see how that's different than arc length, which would have been out here, just the edge of the curve. We want all this area in here. Okay, so now let's do a couple of practice problems. So here we want to calculate the sector area. So here we know our central angle is 120 degrees, so that would make the arc measure also 120 degrees. So then we can do 120 degrees divided by 360 times the area of the circle. And since they didn't write out give us the area of the circle, we know that area of the circle is pi times the radius, which was 16 squared.
Good afternoon, please pardon the interruption. Hannah Ruffin, please come to the main office. Hannah Ruffin.
All right. And so we're going to go ahead and work this out. Make sure that you remember that you need to square the 16 first. So the 120 divided by 360, I just simplify that for this purpose, times pi times 16 squared is 256. And so if I wanted to leave it in terms of pi, I would just multiply 1/3 times 256, which gives us 256 divided by 3 pi. So if I wanted our answer in terms of pi, that's that. Or I can just go ahead and multiply that, and I get 268.1 meters squared. Remember, area is always a unit squared. So this would be the area just of this shaded section here in the picture. Example 2, a circle has a radius of 12 inches. Find the area of a sector whose central angle is 120. So you know, let me just go ahead and sketch a picture so we know what we're looking at. So I'm going to do my best for a circle. Okay, and then so if I go here, and then so if our central angle is 120 degrees, we know the arc that it intercepts is 120, and it has a radius of 12. So now we just want to plug everything in. So now we're going to have 120 divided by 360 times the area of the circle. And the area of the circle, since they didn't give it to us, we're going to plug in the formula, pi times the radius, which is 12 squared. So I simplified the 120 over 360. Again, I got 1/3 times pi times 12 squared is 144. And if I wanted to make those in terms of pi, I would do 1/3 times 144, which would give me 48 pi. So that's a viable option. Sometimes the answer choices look like this. And then if you wanted to take it to the decimal, you just go ahead and multiply those, and you end up with 150.80. And the units here are inches squared. Okay? And so that's how you find sector area and arc length. So make sure you understand the difference and come prepared to ask any questions if needed.